Jake Morrison stood in the big crystal room of the Valar Empire. His legs felt shaky as Queen Zephyra looked at him with her bright silver eyes. She was checking him out like he was some kind of bug under a microscope. The alien queen had long, pointy ears that moved when she thought something was funny. She was reading the important papers Jake had worked on for 3 nights without sleeping. "You want to make a forever trade deal between Earth and the Valar star systems through marriage," she said. Her voice made the crystal walls sing. "A wedding just for show," Jake said quickly. Sweat was running down his face even though the room temperature was perfect. "To show that both our people want peace." Queen Zephyra's helpers whispered to each other in their musical language. Some looked like they didn't believe him. Others seemed to think it was funny. The queen sat very still. Her fancy crown made of living light pulsed softly as she thought about what he said. "Ambassador Morrison," she finally said, "do you know that I am about 347 years old?" "Your people age differently than humans," Jake answered. He was glad he had memorized every report about alien biology. "And marriages between different species are legal under galactic trade rules." "True. Do you also know that I have gotten about 2,638 similar marriage proposals in the past 100 years? Jake's confidence dropped. "I didn't know the number was so exact." "I keep detailed records," the queen said in a dry voice. "It helps me study how persistent human romance can be." Behind Jake, his helper whispered something that sounded like prayers in 3 different languages. The embassy workers had tried to talk Jake out of this plan. They said personal diplomacy was too dangerous when dealing with alien royalty who supposedly ate suitors who failed to impress them. Jake had told them the cannibal stories were probably not true. He was starting to hope he was right about that. "Your Majesty," Jake said, using the formal words he had memorized. "Earth's proposal has special advantages. Our species help each other with technology and culture. Together, we could." "Ambassador," Queen Zephyra interrupted, standing up from her throne. She moved so smoothly it made human movement look clumsy. "Do you really think you can offer me something that 2,637 previous suitors could not?" The throne room became quiet except for the gentle ringing sounds from crystal formations that seemed to respond to the queen's feelings. Jake realized this was the moment that would decide if he went back to Earth as a successful diplomat or as a warning story. "I think I can offer you honesty," he said finally. "Every other proposal probably promised you everything. I'm offering you a short, slightly crazy human who's scared of heights, allergic to most alien foods, and whose main skill for this job is that I'm too stubborn to give up when something seems impossible." For the first time since Jake entered the throne room, Queen Zephyra smiled. It was a dangerous look that made Jake suddenly understand why her species had conquered half the galaxy before deciding conquest created too much paperwork. "Interesting," she said thoughtfully. "And refreshingly honest. Tell me, Ambassador Morrison, are you also too stubborn to admit when something might kill you?" "That depends on the situation, Your Majesty." "The situation of the trial of resonance." Jake's blood turned ice cold. The trial of resonance was mentioned in exactly 3 secret documents, each ending with the note survival rate, 0%. "The trial that no human has survived," he said carefully. "Exactly. Though to be fair, no member of any species has survived it in the past 200 years. I designed it myself after getting frustrated with the quality of potential suitors." Jake's helper made a sound like a balloon losing air. Somewhere in the court gallery, alien nobles were placing what looked like bets on how long Jake would live. "Your Majesty," Jake said, his training fighting with his need to survive, "might I ask what this trial involves?" You might ask, Queen Zephyr replied, moving closer like a hunting cat. But where would be the fun in telling you? Surprise is such an important part of testing character. Of course it is, Jake muttered. I should mention that accepting the trial is completely your choice, the Queen continued. You could simply take back your proposal and return to Earth with the standard trade agreements we've already worked out. Jake looked around the throne room. He saw the excited faces of alien nobles, the nervous looks of his own team, and the absolutely scary smile of a queen who had apparently designed a trial specifically to kill ambitious suitors. And if I were to accept this trial? If you survive, you earn the right to court me properly. If you fail, she shrugged elegantly, well, we'll have an interesting addition to our memorial garden. How comforting. Queen Zephyr stepped close enough that Jake could smell the lightning and starlight scent of her alien biology. The choice is yours, Ambassador. Safe, predictable diplomacy, or the chance to achieve something never done before in human history. Jake thought about his orders from Earth Command, about the trade agreements that would change human civilization, and about the fact that his career would basically be over if he returned without some kind of breakthrough. Your Majesty, he said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt, I accept your trial. The Queen's smile got wider, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp for human comfort. Excellent. We begin at dawn. As the court erupted in excited chatter and his helper began updating his life insurance, Jake wondered if this was how every great diplomatic disaster began, with an overconfident human, an alien ruler with a sense of humor, and a trial designed to prove that some achievements were worth dying for. Dawn on the Vailra homeworld painted the sky in copper and purple colors. Jake stood in the ceremony preparation room wondering if Earth's diplomatic immunity covered death by alien trial. His helper, David Park, paced nervously while counting emergency medical supplies that probably wouldn't help against whatever the Queen had planned. Sir, David said for the 15th time, it's not too late to change your mind. The standard trade agreements are actually quite good. David, has anyone ever told you that your optimism is deeply disturbing? Often, sir. Usually right before diplomatic disasters. Queen Zephyr entered the room with a group that included what looked like medical staff, recording technicians, and someone Jake really hoped wasn't an undertaker. She had changed her formal court clothes for practical gear that somehow made her look even more dangerous. Ambassador Morrison, she said, I trust you slept well. Like a baby, Jake lied. A very worried baby with lots of knowledge about galactic death statistics. Honesty again. I do appreciate that quality. The Queen gestured to her group. Allow me to explain the rules of your trial. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing what looked like a complex maze of crystal structures hanging over a pit that seemed to go down to the planet's core. The trial of resonance, Queen Zephyr began, tests 3 essential qualities: intelligence, courage, and the ability to harmonize with Vailra technology. Harmonize how exactly? Our technology responds to specific bioelectric frequencies generated by emotional states. Fear, anger, and desperation cause system failures. Calm confidence and, she paused, genuine understanding create resonance that allows the technology to function. Jake studied the holographic maze, noting pathway patterns that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. So this is basically a test of whether I can stay calm while navigating a death trap that responds to my emotional state. Exactly. Though I should mention that the previous candidate's failure to maintain proper emotional resonance resulted in some rather spectacular crystal explosions. How spectacular! Visible from orbit. David made another deflating balloon sound. Jake was beginning to suspect his helper had a stress-related breathing problem. Your Majesty, Jake said, Might I ask why this particular trial? Why test emotional control instead of, say, diplomatic skill or trade negotiation abilities? Queen Zephyr's expression grew more serious. Because, Ambassador, ruling requires the ability to make decisions under pressure without losing one's center. If you cannot navigate a simple crystal maze without panic, how could you possibly handle the complexities of interspecies governance? Interspecies governance. Did you think a diplomatic marriage would be purely ceremonial? The Queen's smile returned, sharp as a plasma blade. My consort would be expected to participate in actual leadership decisions affecting billions of lives across multiple star systems. Jake felt his diplomatic worldview restructuring itself around this new information. I see. So this isn't just about trade agreements. This is about whether a human can truly partner with a Veilra in governing a galactic empire. The trial simply determines if you possess the basic emotional stability required for such a position. No pressure at all, Jake muttered. The holographic display shifted, showing the maze's starting platform. You'll have 3 hours to reach the center chamber, where you'll find a resonance crystal that must be activated using proper bioelectric harmony. Simple, really. And if I fail to maintain emotional control? The crystal structures will destabilize, the platform will collapse, and you'll experience rapid deceleration toward the planet's core. Queen Zephyr paused thoughtfully. Though the bioelectric discharge usually renders candidates unconscious before the actual impact, so the pain is minimal. Your Majesty's consideration for candidate comfort is touching. I pride myself on humane trial design. Jake looked at the maze again, trying to process the fact that he was about to attempt something that had killed every previous candidate. Are there any other rules I should know about? The trial responds to your authentic emotional state. Attempting to fake calm or suppress genuine feelings will cause immediate system failure. The Queen moved closer, her silver eyes studying his face intently. This trial cannot be overcome through deception or bravado, Ambassador. Only through genuine mastery of yourself. Wonderful. A test specifically designed to prevent the kind of diplomatic bluffing that's kept me alive for the past decade. Queen Zephyr laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a stellar breeze. I begin to understand why Earth selected you for this mission. You possess a rare combination of self-awareness and stubborn determination. Is that good or bad for my survival prospects? That remains to be seen. The preparation room's doors opened, revealing the beginning of the crystal maze suspended over an abyss that made Jake's fear of heights kick in with enthusiastic precision. David handed him a communication device and what appeared to be a will to sign. Sir, David said quietly, for what it's worth, you're either the bravest diplomat in human history or the stupidest. I'm hoping those aren't mutually exclusive categories. Queen Zephyr extended her hand in what Jake recognized as a formal Veilra gesture of respect. Ambassador Morrison, you have impressed me with your honesty and determination. Whether you survive the next 3 hours will determine if those qualities translate into the wisdom required to rule beside me. Jake shook her hand, noting that her skin felt warm despite her species' reportedly cold biology. Your Majesty, if I survive this trial, I'm going to have some very pointed questions about your previous courtship methods. I look forward to answering them. As Jake approached the starting platform, suspended over an abyss that his phobia-trained brain calculated as definitely fatal, he realized that somewhere between accepting the Queen's proposal and agreeing to her trial, his diplomatic mission had transformed into something much more personal and infinitely more terrifying. The crystal maze waited, ready to test whether a human could truly harmonize with alien technology, alien royalty, and the kind of responsibility that spans star systems. All he had to do was survive the next 3 hours without letting fear override the calm confidence that would keep him alive. Behind him, Queen Zephyra watched with interest that seemed both professional and personal, as if his success or failure would determine more than just diplomatic relations. No pressure at all. The first step onto the crystal platform sent harmonic vibrations through Jake's bones, and he realized that the trial had already begun reading his bioelectric patterns. The maze stretched ahead of him like a three-dimensional puzzle made of living light, each pathway humming with energy that responded to his presence. Fascinating, Queen Zephyra's voice echoed through hidden speakers. Your resonance patterns are unlike anything in our records. Is that good or bad? Jake called back, carefully testing the stability of the crystal walkway. It's unexpected. Most candidates' fear signatures are overwhelming by this point. Yours are present but controlled. Jake paused at the first junction where three pathways branched off in different directions. The left path pulsed with warm golden light. The center path glowed steady blue. The right path flickered with unstable red energy that made his teeth ache. Let me guess, he said, studying the options. The pretty golden path is a trap. The trial responds to authentic decision-making, the Queen replied. Choose based on genuine reasoning, not paranoid assumptions. Jake closed his eyes and tried to feel the subtle differences in the crystal energy patterns. His grandmother had always claimed their family had good intuition for reading energy fields, though she'd usually been talking about poker games rather than alien death mazes. The golden path felt warm but somehow hollow, like an attractive facade hiding structural weakness. The red path radiated raw power but with chaotic instability that screamed danger. The blue path hummed with steady, controlled energy that felt honest. Blue it is, Jake muttered, stepping onto the center walkway. The crystal surface responded immediately, flowing beneath his feet like liquid metal before solidifying into a stable walking surface. The walls around him pulsed with approving harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. Interesting choice, Queen Zephyra observed. You selected the path of controlled power over flashy aesthetics or raw force. Seemed like the most reliable option. Plus, blue has always been my lucky color. You chose based on luck? I chose based on careful analysis disguised as luck. It makes people underestimate me. The Queen's laughter echoed through the maze, carrying harmonics that made the crystal structures brighten. Another layer of honesty. Continue, Ambassador. The pathway led to a chamber where floating platforms arranged themselves in a complex three-dimensional pattern. Each platform glowed with different intensities, and Jake could see that only certain combinations would support his weight long enough to reach the far exit. Okay, he said to himself. This is obviously a logic puzzle disguised as a leap of faith. He studied the platform arrangements, noting that the brightness levels seemed to follow a mathematical progression. The brightest platforms were too intense, they'd probably overload and collapse. The dimmest ones were barely maintaining structural integrity. But the platforms with moderate, steady illumination formed a path that spiraled upward toward the exit. Here goes nothing, Jake said, stepping onto the first moderate brightness platform. It held firm, humming with stable harmonics. He continued across the sequence, each step requiring him to maintain calm focus while calculating the next safe platform. Halfway across, his fear of heights kicked in as he realized he was suspended over an abyss that extended far beyond the limits of the chamber's lighting. His bioelectric signature spiked with panic, and the platform beneath his feet flickered ominously. Control, Ambassador. Queen Zephyra's voice carried a note of concern. The trial reads fear, but it responds to mastery over fear. Jake forced himself to breathe deeply, drawing on diplomatic training that had taught him to maintain composure during everything from trade negotiations with hostile species to dinner parties with senators who wanted to declare war on anyone with more than 2 arms. Fear is information, he said aloud, repeating a mantra from his academy training. Information can be processed. Processing leads to appropriate response. The platform stabilized as his bioelectric patterns returned to controlled levels. He completed the sequence, reaching the far exit with a sense of accomplishment that immediately vanished when he saw what lay ahead. The next chamber contained a single crystal formation that pulsed with complex rhythms like a massive alien heart made of living light. Holographic instructions appeared in the air, written in Valor's script that his translation implant rendered into English. Harmonize with the resonance core using authentic emotional frequency. Duration, 60 seconds minimum. Failure results in immediate platform dissolution. Your Majesty, Jake called out, I don't suppose you could define authentic emotional frequency in terms a simple human might understand? The core reads the truth of your emotional state, Queen Zephyr replied. It requires genuine feeling, not performance. You must open yourself completely to its scan. Jake approached the crystal core, feeling its energy patterns wash over him like warm ocean waves. The surface shimmered with colors that had no names in human languages, and he could sense vast intelligence behind the beautiful facade. Open myself completely, he repeated. Right. Because diplomatic training definitely prepared me for emotional vulnerability with alien technology. He placed his hands on the core's surface and immediately felt his consciousness expand. The crystal wasn't just reading his emotions, it was experiencing them, processing not just what he felt, but why he felt it, how his experiences had shaped his responses, what fears and hopes drove his decisions. For 60 seconds that felt like hours, Jake found himself completely exposed to an alien intelligence that examined every aspect of his psychological makeup. It read his childhood fear of abandonment, his pride in overcoming diplomatic challenges, his genuine desire to build bridges between species, and his carefully hidden terror that he wasn't worthy of the responsibilities he'd accepted. The core pulsed with approving harmonics, and Jake realized that the trial wasn't just testing his emotional control, it was determining whether his motives for accepting the Queen's challenge were genuine. Remarkable, Queen Zephyr's voice carried new respect. Your emotional resonance indicates complete honesty about your limitations and genuine commitment to interspecies cooperation. Is that a passing grade? That's the first phase. 2 more chambers await. Jake stepped away from the core, feeling oddly lightheaded after the emotional examination. Your Majesty, when this is over, we're going to have a serious discussion about informed consent and courtship rituals. I look forward to it, Ambassador. Assuming you survive long enough to complain properly. As Jake advanced toward the next challenge, he realized that each phase of the trial was revealing not just his capabilities, but his character. Queen Zephyr wasn't just testing whether he could navigate alien technology, she was determining whether he possessed the emotional maturity to be trusted with the kind of power that came with ruling a galactic empire. The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, Jake found himself oddly grateful for the honesty of it all. After years of diplomatic dancing around real issues, there was something refreshing about a test that demanded complete authenticity. Even if that authenticity might get him killed. The 4th chamber nearly broke Jake's resolve before he even entered it. Through the crystal archway, he could see a vast space filled with floating obstacles that shifted and changed in response to sonic frequencies. Suspended in the center was a platform surrounded by what appeared to be a 3-dimensional musical composition made of pure energy. The harmony of command, Queen Zephyr's voice carried new solemnity. This challenge has claimed more candidates than all the others combined. Let me guess, Jake said, studying the swirling patterns of energy and sound. I have to conduct an alien orchestra while walking on air. Close. You must navigate through harmonic fields that respond to vocal resonance while maintaining perfect emotional balance. The energy patterns will support you only if your voice produces the correct frequencies, which must be generated through genuine emotional expression. Jake watched previous candidates' energy signatures flicker through the chamber like ghostly recordings, each one showing the moment when fear or frustration caused their harmonic resonance to collapse, sending them tumbling into the abyss. Your Majesty, I should probably mention that I was asked to leave my academy choir after what the director called a complete inability to carry a tune in any recognizable container. This test doesn't require musical ability, Queen Zephyr replied, and Jake could hear something that might have been sympathy in her voice. It requires emotional authenticity expressed through sound. The harmonies respond to the truth of what you feel, not the technical quality of how you express it. So I just say my feelings at alien energy fields? You vocalize your authentic emotional state while navigating increasingly complex harmonic requirements. The chamber will support you as long as your expressions remain genuine. Jake stepped into the chamber and immediately felt the harmonic fields respond to his presence. The energy patterns around him shifted from neutral blue to inquiring green, waiting for him to provide the vocal resonance that would activate the navigation pathways. Okay, he said to himself, genuine emotional expression. What am I actually feeling right now? Terror, obviously, but also determination, curiosity about Veilra technology, and, if he was being completely honest, genuine attraction to a queen who had designed a trial that tested character rather than just competence. He began to vocalize, not singing exactly, but letting his voice carry the complex mixture of emotions churning inside him. The harmonic fields responded immediately, creating pathways of solid light that supported his weight as he moved forward. Fascinating, Queen Zephyr observed. Your harmonic signature is creating resonance patterns we've never recorded before. Is that good or concerning? Both. Continue. The chamber's challenges grew more complex as Jake advanced. Simple vocalizations evolved into requiring him to express increasingly nuanced emotional states, confidence tempered with humility, determination balanced with flexibility, fear acknowledged but not allowed to dominate decision-making. At one point, the harmonic fields demanded that he vocalize his honest opinion of the trial itself. Jake found himself laughing as he expressed his mixture of admiration for the queen's psychological sophistication and frustration with her apparent willingness to kill suitors to test their character. You find attempted murder amusing? The queen asked. I find your approach to relationship evaluation both terrifying and brilliant, Jake replied, his voice creating new harmonic patterns that made the energy fields dance with what looked like amusement. Most first dates don't involve death-defying trials, but most first dates also don't test whether someone is psychologically prepared to help govern a galactic empire. You consider this a date? I consider this the most honest courtship ritual I've ever experienced. Completely terrifying, potentially fatal, but refreshingly direct about what you're actually looking for in a partner. The harmonic fields brightened, and Jake realized that his honest appreciation for the trial's psychological complexity was creating stronger resonance than any attempt at false bravado would have achieved. The final harmonic challenge required him to express his deepest fear about accepting the responsibilities that came with the Queen's proposal. Jake found himself vocalizing his terror that he might not be worthy of the trust being placed in him, that his human limitations might cause harm to species and systems beyond his understanding. The harmonic fields responded to his vulnerability with resonance so powerful that the entire chamber filled with symphonic harmony that made his bones vibrate with music. Jake realized that the trial wasn't testing his ability to be fearless, it was testing his ability to acknowledge fear while still choosing to act. The final chamber awaits, Queen Zephyr announced as Jake reached the exit. This last test will determine whether you possess the most crucial quality for rulership, the wisdom to know when not to rule. Jake paused at the threshold of the final chamber, understanding suddenly that everything leading up to this moment had been preparation for a test that would challenge not his desire for power, but his judgment about when to reject it. Your Majesty, he said, I'm beginning to understand why this trial has a 0% survival rate. Most candidates never reach the final chamber. Those who do face a choice that requires them to prioritize the greater good over personal ambition. And the ones who choose personal ambition? Learn that some crystal formations are designed to respond very poorly to selfish decision-making. Jake stepped into the final chamber, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not just his survival, but whether he truly understood what Queen Zephyr was offering and whether he was wise enough to accept or reject it for the right reasons. Behind him, the harmonic field sang with the echo of his authentic emotional expressions, and ahead of him waited a test that would require him to choose between everything he thought he wanted and everything the galaxy actually needed. No pressure at all. The final chamber was deceptively simple, a circular platform surrounding a single crystal formation that pulsed with soft, steady light. No death traps, no complex navigation challenges, just Jake and a crystal that seemed to be waiting patiently for him to understand something crucial. Queen Zephyr's voice echoed from speakers that had somehow become unnecessary. Jake could feel her presence through the resonance fields he'd learned to navigate. Ambassador Morrison, she said, you have successfully demonstrated intelligence, courage, emotional control, and authentic self-expression. One challenge remains. Jake approached the crystal formation, noting that it felt different from the previous cores, older, wiser, and somehow sad. What is this one testing? Wisdom. Specifically, the wisdom to recognize when accepting power would serve the greater good and when it would cause harm. Holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing complex data streams about the Vailra Empire, population statistics, resource distributions, political tensions, and trade relationships that span dozens of star systems. The complete picture, Queen Zephyr continued. Every aspect of what ruling beside me would actually entail. Jake studied the displays, his diplomatic training helping him process the vast complexity of managing an interstellar civilization. The responsibilities were staggering: billions of lives across multiple species, economic systems that affected entire star clusters, and political decisions that could trigger wars or create lasting peace. Your Majesty, he said slowly, this isn't just about Earth-Vailra trade relations. No. My empire stands at a crossroads. We can either expand our influence through peaceful integration with species like humanity, or we can return to the isolationist policies that have kept us safe but stagnant for centuries. And you need a consort who can help navigate that choice. I need a partner who understands that power shared responsibly can accomplish more than power held selfishly. The crystal formation pulsed, and suddenly Jake was experiencing the memories of previous candidates who had reached this chamber. He felt their ambition, their excitement at the prospect of ruling a galactic empire, and their failure to grasp the weight of responsibility that came with such power. They saw the crown, not the duty, he said, understanding flooding through him. They saw the title of Queen's Consort and imagined commanding fleets, reshaping civilizations, being remembered across history. Queen Zephyr's voice carried centuries of disappointment. None of them saw the daily reality of making decisions that affect species they would never meet, cultures they could barely understand. Jake felt the crystal's final test beginning, not a challenge to overcome, but a choice that would define everything that followed. Your Majesty, he said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say, I don't think I'm qualified for this position. The chamber fell silent. Through the resonance fields, Jake could feel Queen Zephyr's sharp attention focused entirely on him. Explain. I'm a career diplomat from a species that's barely figured out faster-than-light travel. My understanding of galactic politics comes from textbooks and treaty negotiations. The responsibilities you're describing require someone with experience governing multi-species civilizations, someone who understands the long-term consequences of decisions that affect billions of lives. The crystal formation brightened, and Jake realized that his honest assessment of his limitations was somehow the correct response. "Continue," the Queen said quietly. "But," Jake added, "I also think that might be exactly why you need someone like me." "How so?" "Because I'm not qualified, I wouldn't make decisions based on assumed authority. I'd have to rely on advisors, consensus building, and careful study of each situation. I'd be forced to govern collaboratively rather than autocratically." The crystal pulsed with approving harmonics, and Jake felt Queen Zephyr's presence move closer through the resonance fields. "You would accept a position of power while acknowledging your limitations?" "I would accept a position of service while learning to understand the responsibilities." Jake placed his hands on the crystal formation, feeling its ancient wisdom flowing through him. "The goal isn't to rule your empire, Your Majesty. The goal is to help it evolve into something that serves all its citizens better. And Earth benefits most from being part of a stable, peaceful galactic community. Our trade relationships will be stronger if they're built on mutual respect rather than human ambition." The chamber filled with harmonic resonance so powerful that Jake could feel it in his DNA. The crystal formation beneath his hands began to glow with light that seemed to encompass every color in existence and several that human eyes couldn't normally process. "Jake Morrison," Queen Zephyr said, her voice carrying formal weight, "you have passed the trial of resonance." "Because I admitted I wasn't qualified?" "Because you demonstrated that you understand the difference between wanting power and accepting responsibility." The chamber's walls became transparent, revealing Queen Zephyr standing on an observation platform, her silver eyes bright with something that looked remarkably like pride. "Your Majesty," Jake said, "I have to ask, did you design this trial specifically to eliminate candidates who were seeking power for its own sake?" "I designed this trial to find someone who would help me transform an empire into a true democracy," she replied, moving toward him with fluid grace. "Someone who understood that the best leaders are those who serve rather than command." "And you think a human diplomat can help with that transformation?" "I think a human diplomat who just chose honesty over ambition, service over power, and collaboration over domination is exactly what this empire needs." Queen Zephyr reached the platform where Jake stood, the crystal formation between them pulsing with the harmonic frequencies that had tested every aspect of his character. "So," she said, her smile carrying warmth that had nothing to do with alien biology, "shall we discuss the terms of our partnership? Because I should warn you, actually governing an empire is significantly more challenging than surviving my trial." Jake looked at the Queen who had tested him so thoroughly, thought about the responsibilities he was accepting, and realized that somewhere between diplomatic necessity and death-defying trials, he had found something he hadn't expected: genuine respect and affection for an alien monarch who cared more about good governance than personal power. "Your Majesty," he said, "I accept your proposal. But I'm going to need extensive training, patient advisors, and probably therapy to deal with the stress of making decisions that affect billions of lives. I can provide all of those things. Though I should mention that interspecies couples counseling is still a relatively new field. We'll figure it out as we go." 2 years later, the Veilra Empire had transformed into the Galactic Cooperative Commonwealth, with democratic representation for all member species and a ruling council that made decisions through careful consensus rather than royal decree. Ambassador Jake Morrison, now Prince Consort of the Commonwealth, spent his days facilitating negotiations between species, mediating trade disputes, and learning that the most powerful thing about power was knowing when not to use it. Queen Zephyr had kept her promise about providing patient advisors and stress management support, though she'd failed to mention that ruling a galactic democracy would involve more committee meetings than any human being should be expected to survive. But in the evenings, when they reviewed the day's decisions and planned for challenges that would affect generations yet to be born, Jake realized that he had found something infinitely more valuable than power or prestige: a partnership built on mutual respect, shared responsibility, and the understanding that the best relationships, like the best governments, were built on trust rather than dominance. The trial of resonance had tested every aspect of his character. But the real test came every day, in the small decisions and daily compromises that determined whether two beings from different worlds could build something better together than either could achieve alone. And so far, they were passing that test with flying colors.